All right. I am Raymond Camden. I am a developer evangelist looking for my next role. As I was saying a few minutes ago, tech is a wonderful industry to be in these years. If you're hiring or know anybody hiring in DevRel or DevRel adjacent, please reach out to me. I am blogging at raymondcamden.com, and those are my social contacts there. If you have any questions about what I'm showing today, absolutely reach out to me. Like, I love your questions because most of the time your questions can turn into new blog posts from my site. So you'll be helping me as well. But again, absolutely reach out with anything you have in mind. If you want a copy of this slide deck, you are more than free to clone the repo. I will say this repo has a bunch of demos and a bunch of slide decks. This should be the Chrome AI slide deck. There's a bunch of stuff in there, more than I'm showing tonight, but you can grab a copy of it. I will say everything I'm showing tonight is pretty much going to be on CodePen, so you don't have to actually worry about downloading anything. But feel free to dig in there if you want. So my basic assumptions. I am not going to tell you what Gen AI is. I feel like we're a couple years into it now. We don't need the intro to generative AI. Hopefully, you are at least somewhat familiar with kind of how it works, what it does, and so forth. This is a JavaScript presentation, but you do not have to be an expert at all at JavaScript. In fact, for the most part, the APIs I'm showing today are relatively simple, at least in terms of what you do in JavaScript. Some of the orchestration can get a little bit complex, but it's not going to be anything that strains your mind, and it won't be on a leak code test anytime soon. So, TLDR. Chrome is bringing Gen AI to the web, and luckily, like, everyone's really cool with that. Like, no one has complained at all. Everyone is just super chipper, 100% on board with Chrome doing this. So we don't even have to think about anyone not being on board with that. Uh, yeah, there are some people who are not happy about that, but that's okay. This is going to be using the Nano model from Google, which is relatively small. And I'll talk a bit about what that means and what that impact is to your web apps in a little bit. But generally, it's a couple of gigs, which is small for a model. What's cool about what they're bringing is not just like a model to the web, like a general purpose prompt. They are bringing that, but they're also bringing multiple APIs that are actually kind of focused. You can imagine taking a model and giving it a really good system instruction. They're doing that actually for their APIs, which is really freaking handy, I think. And outside of getting that initial model, this will be 100% on device, no charge, no keys, nothing at all like that, just on your local machine. So if you want to learn more after this, they do have a good website with docs, examples, and stuff like that. Don't go there now because obviously I'm talking about it. So I do want to give a bit of a warning. This particular feature or this idea, concept, whatever, has been around for I think about 2 years or so, and it has gone through some radical changes. A year ago, actually, I was presenting on it, and that morning I got an email saying that, oh, hey, by the way, we have completely changed how the APIs work, or at least changed how you address them. I got this about maybe 3 or so hours before I was about to present, and I, of course, already updated Chrome, but they sent apologies, so that's okay. I will say, for the most part, things are beginning to cement and get a bit more firm for Chrome anyway. That being said, one of my demos, which has worked for over a year, just stopped working. And I was convinced like I had introduced like a syntax error or something. I shared it with Google and they're like, yeah, nope, this is a bug. So it's it's kind of good. You'll see, and I'll talk a bit about what that means as we get into the APIs. So, in terms of how you enable or start working with these APIs, they do have a EPP program, early program participant, or EA, early access participant, whatever. They have a form. You click it, you go in, you sign in, and basically all they're going to do is subscribe you to a Google group. Like, that's it. You don't get keys or anything like that, or special knowledge. You don't necessarily have to join. But I will say the group has actually been incredibly helpful for like when you get stuck or just need feedback. Flags and bits, that's very, very vague. As these APIs have progressed over the last year or two, some of them are or were behind flags, and that has moved forward where they're just generally available. Some APIs are not quite there yet. And in some cases, there's a released API that has a new version coming out that's behind a flag. And I'll again talk about this when we get in there. For the most part, you won't need it unless I tell you to worry about a flag. But in general, you should be good to go if right now if you are running a up to date version of Chrome. So, in terms of those APIs, what they are shipping. You have a translator, a language detector, a summarizer, a writer, rewriter, a proofreader, and the general prompt. And this is what we're going to be digging into today in terms of our demos and examples and so forth. For each of these, I'm going to give you an idea of how available they are in terms of like, are they really released or are they behind a flag and so forth, and talk about some of the changes. And also, I'll point out their docs actually has a great table that'll show all these APIs and show you, where they are in terms of release. So, in terms of features like where these APIs exist, they will be supported in both the browser itself and in extensions. And in some cases, they went GA for extensions before the browser. They do support streaming. I am not really a fan of that. I don't really do a lot of chat type interfaces with these APIs, but you can enable streaming if you want more of a quicker and zippier response. A lot of the APIs support that. I have one demo using it. Just keep in mind that I avoided it mostly just for personal taste. You have a session when you work with these APIs, which means you have a context window that you have to kind of pay attention to, but you can also reset and clone or create a completely new session as well. When it comes to the general prompt, you have a lot of things you could tweak, including system instructions, structured output, temperature, and so forth. I never mess with temperature, but I use the system instructions and structured output almost consistently in most of my work. It is multimodal in terms of parsing. So it can't generate an image or audio now, but it can parse images and audio. It can't do files, but keep in mind that there are multiple JavaScript libraries out there that you could take an Office document and you could get the text out of it, or even Markdown as well. And if you visit my blog, very recently I talked about a cool library called, I think, Office Parser that will take any Office document or PDF and give you Markdown. And you can absolutely pass that to the Gemini AI prompts here. So in terms of general usage, and pretty much all the APIs are going to follow this exact format. You will check for availability, of course. Just, anytime you're using a bleeding edge API on the web, you should first ensure that it actually exists before you do it. You will then check the capabilities, and that is really on a API per API basis. You don't necessarily always need to check for the particular capabilities. When that matters, I will mention it in this slide deck. You then need to see if the model needs to be downloaded. The API will return that, and this becomes important when you want to start that particular process because Chrome requires a user gesture just for that download. So in the earlier days, like if you go to my blog and look at my first couple of blog posts on this, I never worried about the user gesture. I would just kick off the process to download or use the model and just go with it. Now that has to be behind a user click or interaction of some sort before you do anything. After that, you create the instance. And like I was just saying, you may need to ensure that a user gesture happened first. Typically, all I do is if I can see that it needs to be downloaded, I have a button show up and I'll say, hey, if you want to enable AI awesomeness, click this button. And I do that before doing the download of the model. And then after that, you just use it. So how you use it will depend on which of these APIs we're working with. But really, it's the first couple bullet points that is going to be a bit complex. Typically, once you get past that, actually making use of these APIs are pretty trivial. All right, so let's start digging into these particular features. Translator, as you could probably guess, will translate text. One of the cool things about it is that before you try to translate from X to Y, you can actually ask the model, say, hey, can you actually do this before you try and get any type of particular error? This does actually do a automatic download of a language pack. From what I know, that's pretty small. You also get no control over that at all, but it will stream some more bits down to the system. This is available on desktop. And I'll say, I think everything I'm showing today is desktop only. I have no idea when they plan on supporting mobile. But it's been available since Chrome 138. And I believe we're on 148 now or so. So it's been available for a little while. So using it, this is basic feature detection. So I look for it in the window object. And then for Translator in particular, I can actually look at the capabilities by using an availability method. And the availability method, all of the APIs have, essentially, is this model available? When I pass options in, I'm basically saying, hey, I not only care if you can translate, I also specifically care if you could do English to Mandarin. And this is going to return to me either unavailable, which means you're out of luck, uh, downloadable or downloading. So it's either in the process of downloading or it can be downloaded or available. And that's literally what I just said. And again, for downloadable and downloading, before you go any further, you need to have some user gesture available. Run with that. Maybe wondering why unavailable. This is a bit out of our hands, but Chrome will look at your device, look at how much free space it has because it does need to download a couple gigs, and also look at the hardware and just say, can this even run this model at all? You get no say so in that at all. Like, hey, I don't mind if it's slow, that's fine. No, if this comes back unavailable, you just can't do anything. Now, once I know that I can work with it, I'm going to create a instance of the model. You can see here with the create call. Now, what happens here is if it needs to download, it's going to take a minute or two. And I've seen it even on my high-speed connection to be a couple minutes when it needs to download fresh. You can and should use the monitor event handler in there to say, hey, as things happen, let me give user feedback. My code sample here has console.log that would not work for regular people. So typically you would update the DOM or do something else as well. If the model had already been downloaded, if the result of the availability check was available, then this is near instantaneous. It does take a second, I think, but it won't have to download. Now, the big thing about this, about that download, that is per device. So if you run the site, foo.com, and you're using this, if the user has, again, on Chrome desktop, if they've hit any other website making use of this, the model will already be there. So you get that benefit and you don't have to wait for them to download it again just for your site. Now, once again, this is something that you don't have control over in terms of like you can't update the model yourself manually. That's all kind of being handled by Chrome behind the scenes. But it does mean it's a little bit simpler that you don't have to worry about like where it's being stored and stuff like that. After all that pizzazz, after you've done all that, then the API gets really darn simple. So I have an instance of my model and it's just dot translate. Like it is as simple as that. And we will go in here. Anyone in the room, I don't think I could hear y'all, but someone could say so in chat. Anybody here speak Mandarin? Time, and I will write some text about what time does the 4 o'clock bus arrive and will it have cats? I speak a tiny bit of Mandarin, but my pronunciation is horrible. So we'll translate. And I'm not sure how well you saw that on the stream, but that was near instant. Now, I will say I did have the model already downloaded. So I didn't have to worry about that in particular. But that worked, again, pretty quick. If I add some more text, I'm kind of cheating by doing copying and pasting, but that is also pretty darn quick. I'll show the code, but really it's what I showed before. The only thing I've done is add a bit more DOM manipulation in there, but you can see where I'm checking specifically for English to Mandarin. And I am then right there. That's where I create the session. Again, I shouldn't use console.log. I should actually say something in the browser so the user knows. But this is literally all that is needed. I do have a bit of code here to cache that translator object, so I'm not recreating it every time. That makes it a bit zippier as well. So there are good docs about translation. There's a GitHub explainer online. The Google team also has some good demos as well if you want to see more than what I showed today. And let's switch over to Language Detector. And again, the text languages, big surprise. Just like with translation, you can actually ask the API, say, hey, I need to check for Mandarin. Is that something that you could handle before you even try to detect that particular language? It will give you a list of possibilities based on confidence and sorted by confidence, with 1 being extremely confident and 0 being not confident at all. It's actually a rather long list. So typically, you'll want to filter that or just try picking the first one instead. This has also been available for a little while now. So since Chrome 138, and code is the exact same. So I'm looking for the API in the window object. I am running an availability check. In this case, I'm not actually being specific. I'm saying, hey, I don't really care about the language, just check for anything. And this will again return that unavailable, available, downloading, or downloadable. And then once I did actually have an example of that. So if you do care, there you go. But then once I have it, I create my instance and I run detect and I pass a string. So like fairly simple. We're going to have some fun with this. Let me break out of that little window here. And let's actually do this in full view. Open up my dev tool so you can see I log all this stuff. So I'm going to say parlez-vous français, merci beaucoup, etc. And this was detected with French at a very high confidence level. And if I actually go in here, let me make this a little bit bigger. All right, I hope this works. There we go. So it actually found 4 languages: French, PT, not sure what that is. CA is probably Canadian French, and UND, I don't know. But let's really mess with it. And I did typo, merci. So parlez-vous, Espanol, gracias, mix up my languages here. And the confidence actually went so low Oh, thank you, Mateo. The confidence went so low. It still had 8 guesses, but you see my highest confidence was 0.56, and my code is actually we'll switch back to that. My code is filtering out to zero point 0.8 and above. So none of these language. It did see Spanish. That was its first guess, and then French second. So it did an admirable job, but my code did the right thing by saying, I'm not really confident enough about this to guess what you mean. But what you can see, hopefully, is that you have some control over here on how you represent back to the user that, I think this is so and so. What's cool is that you can then kind of try to use this with the Translator API. So if you're not sure what's coming in, you can first try to detect it. And if it is not English, let's say, then translate it to your language of choice. And I'm pretty sure the Google demo uses both of them together. So actually, let's go and open that up. Hello world. Yep, 99% sure it's English. Let's change this to parlez. I can't type. Parlez-vous français? And yeah, on the fly, it changed all of a sudden because of that typo. That's interesting. It's very, very sure it's French, and we could translate the French to Spanish and should say, see if their demo is actually working. I haven't run their demos in a while. I run mine all the time. Habla français. Yes, I believe that's right. Not going to pretend to speak either language in a great way. Moving on, Summary API summarizes text. What's cool about this is that actually you have a large set of options covering different styles and how long you want your summary. Available since Chrome 138. Again, I believe this one actually may be available on mobile because I checked all these this week. In terms of options, when you do your summary, you could say key points, which is your default, TLDR, teaser, or headline, and each could be short, medium, or long. So based on your summary, the result can be either Markdown or plain text. And you could also, if you want, give it some shared context. So if you're doing summaries of like medical papers and things like that, you can give some shared context to say, hey, our typical content relates to medical diseases and, fun stuff like that. Results sometimes include context. This is me being very, very picky and getting on a soapbox about something that you may not care about. So in my demo, and you'll see it in a second, I am giving the Gettysburg Address. When I ask for a summary of the Gettysburg Address, in my mind, that means a summary of what's being talked about. Sometimes I've seen the APIs actually say what the document is. Oh, this is the Gettysburg Address that was given by Lincoln, blah, blah, blah. It's talking about the context of what that text is. In my personal opinion, it shouldn't do that. It should literally just summarize the text. I am probably the only person in the world who gets a bit bothered by that. But just keep that in mind if you see it, that may be a result of the API. So again, code's gonna be the exact same. So feature detection, and then checking for availability and doing whatever is required, doing the create call, and again, updating the browser, which I'm not doing with console.log, but just let the user know that this particular model is downloading. And then once you have it, you can just pass summarize. Like it's that simple. So I mentioned the Gettysburg Address. Now I will say this is one of the slower APIs. So I'll hit click and we'll see how long it takes. It's not a lot of text. It's 3 paragraphs. And that's like about 8 seconds. And that's not horrible, but it is something to kind of keep in mind in terms of what you have. Now, I mentioned there were multiple types of summarization and multiple lengths. I was a bit unsure of what these different types meant. So what I did is I built a demo that lets me paste in text, and it goes through all like 16 or 12 different options so I can see the different results. So if you're planning on adding this to your website and you're not sure, do I want key points? Do I want TLDR? Do I want short, medium, long? You can actually do a couple of samples and then see the outputs and how they change as you change the different options. Like for me, teaser and TLDR feels really, really close. But you may think it's a bit different. Headline, one sentence, and you can see it looks like a headline you would use in a post. And the key points are going to be bulleted points. All right, moving on. So I talked specifically about the speed. It wasn't horrible, 8 to 9 seconds at most, I think. But it is slower than the other ones, I think. So just in the last month, Google have shipped something that allows you to specify a preference where you could say, I want speed over quality. All right. This particular part of the API is currently behind a flag. Google released a good demo of this. I say good because sometimes it doesn't work quite right, but you can actually run this, and it's taking a short amount of text, and it's doing the performance summary versus the quality summary. And you can see that is like 1/4 of the speed. In terms of the API quality dropdown, it still seems fine to me. But this is an option that you can consider. Uh, you can see if it makes sense for you. So along with picking what type of summary you want, how long you want it, you can also decide if you want a quicker but maybe not as smart response. Again, this just went live like less than a month ago or so. So it's not necessarily GA right now, but I would imagine relatively soon, probably. So that's again my slide deck. If you grab, you can get the docs, the GitHub Explainer, more demos than what I showed here. Let's hop into the writer and the rewriter. This will either just generate text whole haul or transform your text. For each of these, you can specify tone, length, format, and like with the summary, you can provide some shared context if you want to say, all of my writing is about cats, so just going to keep that in mind. You can specify a different input and output language if you want to do translation on the fly, which is kind of cool. And when you work with length, if it's brand new text, so you're using the writer, short, medium, or long. If you're rewriting, shorter, as is, or longer. You can also do a change in tone, going from more formal to more casual, or keeping it in the middle. And once again, for the writer versus rewriter, they have slightly different versions of each of these. So this one is not GA. It is behind a flag, and their docs will tell you how to do it. I'm going to skip the writer demo because I think the rewriter demo is a lot more fun. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that Gettysburg Address, probably one of the most famous speeches ever, and say, you know what? This is the TikTok generation, so we're going to do more casual and make it shorter because, I got to get this through to my kid in like 10 seconds or less. And you could say, oh, yeah, 86 years ago, our founders started a new country here, and we're now in a huge civil war. So what's kind of fun with this, and I've done this before, is you can actually take that input, and you know what? This is still too long. And still too serious. Let's make it a little bit more fun and tight and short and just see what we get. And it changed the language. I've never seen that before. I've seen it normally get shorter. Yeah, a little flummoxed, to be honest. Like I mentioned earlier, like one of my existing demos stopped working like this week. And I have never seen it do it. Let's just run this one more time and say maybe there was a gremlin in the system. That is crazy. All right. Well, I have something new to report tomorrow. You know what? I'm just going to reload this, start from scratch, and say more casual, generate on that, and see if it works again from scratch. Yeah, that is okay. Well, I have something new to report. It's always fun when Gen AI just kind of goes cuckoo out of nowhere. So, Adam asked some great questions, but I want to hold them until the end. In the chat is my little summary of what he asked. I made him a lot smaller, but I'll get to that when I wrap up. Proofreader API, like I was saying, I think right before the laptop died, this is the newest API. It's maybe a couple of months old. And as you can imagine, it identifies grammar, spelling, and punctuation errors. Is this better than what the browser OS does? I honestly don't know. Like, I feel like for at least 5+ years in every interface and every app on my computer, Windows or Mac, it's just been built in. Like, I type something, even in a web form, I'll get the little red squiggles, I'll get the green squiggles, I think, for grammar. Is this better? I don't know. This is the only API they're shipping where I'm like, really, like, not sure, if I would actually see this in the wild. It can do correction. It could tell you correction, I should say. The docs say it can explain issues, like explain pronunciation issues. As far as I could see, that is not actually shipping yet. You can specify an input language. You can't tell it to only do one thing, like only do spelling or only do grammar. So it's pretty much just a whole hog, proofread this input. This is also behind a flag. Like I said, it's relatively new. And I will show you an example. And let me make this. And I skipped the code, but the code is almost the exact same. So window.proofreader, creating the object, and then I'm going to run a .proofread method. So in this little form here, I've got a couple of typos. And if I hit check my work, it's running that API and it actually can give me a corrected version. And if I go into my dev tools, believe I dumped out the whole result set so you could see. So it has a corrected version, which I could just take whole hog. Or if I want to, I can actually look at the issues and I get what the correction is, what the fix is, and where the end and start index is. So if I wanted to draw something up in the UI, I could do that instead. It's also just a heck of a lot easier to do uh, uh, take the corrected input and just work with it. But y'all could see, like, maybe this was very faint on my screen, but like his next where I'm missing the space, I have a little red squiggle already. Blogging where I have too many G's, I have that already. This API, honestly, I don't know. But what's going to happen is that someone's going to build a really cool demo use case of this. I'm going to be like, oh, of course, that's why it makes sense. Right now, I'm still kind of up in the air. So the last API, the prompt API, this is your general purpose, like do anything at all. It is very flexible. This is where you could pass system instructions and do structured output, session persistence and cloning. This is a session-based API, so you will be able to keep track of your tokens. And because it's session-based, if I ask the question, who are the characters in Star Wars? And it says, A, B, and C. And if I say, okay, who was the first one? It's going to know what I'm talking about because it has that session. Now, you do need to keep track of your tokens. And if you get to a point where you've almost filled that window, you need to do kind of the typical procedure of summarize everything so far, create a new session, and seed it with that summary so you can keep going. This is the one that could work with images and audio and available since Chrome 148. So that's, I think, about a month or so. And as an example, I will say, why is the sky blue? And I will get the very nice, boring stuff about light scattering and stuff like that. Notice this. This is a little bit not zippy, um, but we do have a response. And if I say, so it mentioned sunsets, or if I say, tell me more about the first bullet point, it should remember that that is sunlight and colors because this is still the same session object that I'm working with. And I swear it used to be a little zippier. Of course, I was a bit quicker when I was younger as well. And yeah, so it picked that up. Code, very much the same. The object is the language model. So I could look for that in the window object. I see if it's available. And then the actual prompt, once I make my session, is literally just dot prompt. Now that's for the simple example. It does get a bit more complex. This particular example, this one runs really, really quick. Let me open this on CodePen. And all right, let me reload this one more time to make sure y'all see it. It says now turning it into a forecast. So what this demo does, this was one of the first cool things I did with APIs with Gen AI. I'm using a pirate weather API to get a forecast for my location. And this returns a pure JSON object. I take that pure JSON object and I kind of filter it down to the weather summary and so forth. And then what I want is I want the prompt API to just summarize that into an English sentence. So don't just show me like Monday, high, low, Tuesday, high, low. Just summarize it for me. And I also said, hey, you know what? You're also a cat. So this is an example of how a system instruction can be passed to it. And literally all I do is prompt with my weather information and I get back that result. In a case that's a little bit hard to see, warm, mostly sunny with a few showers here and there, except maybe Friday with those noisy thunderstorms. And that is accurate. So you may be asking, like, why pure? Why would you want to turn hard, fast data into a nice little summary? I think it's kind of cute. I also think this could be really useful in cases where maybe you have a lot of data and you want just to give a nice, exec level summary of that data. The prompt API works really darn well for that, I think. So for images, you basically create your session with expected inputs. Basically, you're telling it, hey, I'm going to be passing you images. This could be text, video, image, or audio when you pass that in. Expected outputs is supported, but only for text. When it comes to the image source, bitmaps, file objects, HTML elements, and so forth, and this is an example of how the code looks. And I am almost at time. I'm going to take 5 more minutes because of the laptop issue. But I am going to pass in a image and basically just ask, and again, this is all on device, ask it to give me a summary of that picture. And it did it near perfect, I think. And that's a very, very, not really a tabby cat, but she is sitting patiently next to a colorful lava lamp. And because of that cat, I had to move that particular lamp. So I will share, I did a blog post on a great use of Chrome's AI where I tried doing what I just showed you. Here's a picture. Why is this not loading? I'm not going to worry about it. I did a demo where I took a picture and I asked for the summary, and it worked okay. These are pictures I took in Europe on a trip. I then did an EXIF scan of every image, and if the longitude and latitude were in that image EXIF data, I used a geocoder to translate the longitude and latitude to a place name. Once I had the place name, I was able to tell Chrome, hey, here's a picture of something. I took it in Bulgaria. What is it? And it was shocking how much better Chrome, again, all on device, was able to say, hey, this is actually the so and so Parliament building in this particular city. It did a great job of doing that. And I know that my blog is working because I was just there. So let's see. There we go. Yeah. All right. Look at all those nice little errors. Um, it's on my blog. You can see an example of it. But basically, it was just me taking the Chrome AIs, uh, uh, a library to get EXIF data from images, and then another API for the geolocation on that latitude and longitude. So streaming available in some of the APIs, Rewriter, Writer, Prompt, and Summarizer. There is a demo, and literally all this is going to do is as I ask it to summarize, it is going to stream out. So instead of having to wait for the whole thing. And the code difference, which I'm going to skip just for time, is not that difference. Again, for me, it's just a personal preference to avoid the streaming responses. You may be different. Cool. So this is the point where I would show my last two demos. One of these is the one that actually broke like this week. So I won't show it. Instead, I will show the fun one, which I've already loaded up here. So you may have heard of a little book series called Dungeon Crawler Carl. It's a little bit popular now. And if you've not heard of the series, one of the things in the book, it's basically a man and his cat get sent to a real world RPG role playing game. Whenever they do something, they will earn an achievement. And the achievement is typically written in an incredibly snarky, sarcastic way. So what I did is I built a web-based demo where I could say, I cleaned the cat litter 2 days in a row. So I'm very proud that I did this. And what I'm doing is I'm using the Chrome prompt API. I passed in that text and I gave it, system instruction. I want you to be snarky like Dungeon Crawler Carl and create this particular achievement for me, the Porcelain Sanctum Ascendant. And it's, if you read the books, this is actually like right on target for the type of achievements you get from this. So this is all linked to from my blog. It's just the prompt API. You know what? I won't show the code because I know I'm at time and I want to get to Adam's questions. Adam asked two good questions while the laptop was being. Adam, you're actually there, I think. So they may have heard your questions. I apologize if that's the case. But I think his first question was, this is Chrome only. Could you also fall back to like an API? 100%. And Chrome, the Google Teams docs say the exact same thing. So Chrome desktop is a sizable chunk of the audience out there, but certainly, when you consider desktop only, it's probably only half, maybe. Definitely not 100 or even like 90%. So you can try both. You could say, hey, I'm on Chrome desktop. This API is available. I can work with it. Cool. If not, I could use a third-party API provider. So I could have a serverless function that takes my input. My key is nice and hidden, sends it out, get the response back, and go to there. And what's great in that scenario is that you're obviously paying for those server calls. If a good chunk of your people don't need that, then you're saving money. I'll also point out there's other options like Transformers.js. I've only played with it a little bit. That's completely cross-browser, so that may be an option for you as well. Second question that Adam had asked about the Translator API, and I think he was asking, what about the entire browser UI? You can do that technically. You would need to write JavaScript code to inspect the entire DOM and get the text content of every single thing on the page and go through and translate every single bit of that. I don't think I would do that, but technically it is possible. In my mind, where the Translator API is going to come into play is user-generated content. You can imagine like a social media or a post, for example. And I want to say, hey, click this button to translate it to your native language. By the way, don't forget the browser broadcast what language it speaks. So you can actually sniff if the user is a Spanish speaker or a French speaker. So you could, on the fly, you could offer the opportunity to translate portions of your page. And generally, I would lean towards that. So that was a lot of talking. And I will wrap up with more links. The news group I don't link to because Google's being a little bit weird about it. They want you to sign that EAP form, even though I'm pretty sure it's automatic. They don't like us linking to the news group, even though it's public. Listen, they've been incredibly helpful on the news group, so I'm not going to complain. But you will get a link to that when you sign that form, and you can participate. And again, they are very, very helpful. And thank you. I went a little bit long, and I apologize. But if y'all have any questions, ask now. And if not, I will get out of Adam's way.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was great.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. We do have one quick question for you. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so another question regarding that so if you had like an array of strings of all the different text on your websites instead of doing the whole DOM, so you have like every single phrase that's in your website that you just parse in, would that be a good use case to use that translator API is if you just have a big bunch of strings and you can tell it go from English to Spanish or something and it will iterate through all of those? Would that be a good implementation of it?
I'm going to say no, but I'm a bit hesitant on that. To me, that I imagine you're building like a spa, and you have like some core data JSON files for your spa, and in one of those core files is your language strings. I would probably do a server side. Well, in ideal world, hire a translator, right, and get proper translation. Outside of that, because it's typically a spa, I'd probably do that server side and do it one time only, and then generate those translations and then ship that with my spa, and then still also hire a translator to at least verify that the translations went fine. But in that particular case, to me, it feels more like a one-time on the server operation versus something I would do in the client. Again, like I kind of come back to user-generated content, like, Blue Sky posts and stuff like that, where you'd want, it's not your content or it's not your written static content.
So stick with like static strings for like your content, but then you can use something like this when the user's inputting their own content, right? So you're saying.
Yeah, I think that would be a bit more for something like a button label. Like a button label is like the typical thing you hear about doing internationalization for. I would rely on human or server-driven translations for those.
Cool. Thank you. That was really cool.
Oh.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions they want to share? Okay. Thank you so much, Raymond. That was super awesome. Thank you so much.